Alright, welcome back. Rim here. In this video, I'll continue where we left off and cover some of the things I left out in the last video. First, I want to elaborate more on the content browser and what each type of asset is. There are several that I won't cover, but I'll cover all the ones you'll use in the near future and for the majority of your projects. You'll hear me use the word actor a lot in my descriptions. Unreal uses this terminology to describe anything that can be placed in the world, from a 3D model such as a player character, a building, a function-specific object like a light, a camera. There's also particle effects and many other things. Everything's an actor. In the last video, I covered static meshes and made a mention to skeletal meshes. Once again, a static mesh is basically a 3D model that can be placed in the world that does not change on its own, like a building. You can programmatically change its size and scale, but it usually remains the same. It's not animated. A skeletal mesh is a 3D model that can have moving parts and an animation profile. For instance, it could be a player character with a full skeleton inside that can cause it to move and make gestures, a vehicle with moving parts, or something as simple as a tree that can sway in the wind. I also showed you how to put a material on a wall in our last video. These material files have their own programming, but they all start with a basic texture file, which is a simple image. The images that you use for a texture file are usually tileable though, so they will appear seamless when you put it on a huge wall or something. Once you create the material, you can change certain variables to change the coloring, transparency, and other cool things to make it look how you want. Blueprints are the heart and soul of our game. We can take our player character's skeletal mesh and assign it to a blueprint and go into it and code what each button does and what happens when enemies touch it, etc. Blueprints are where we go to program each actor. I'll cover these more in the blueprint specific video coming up. The level itself also has a master blueprint where all the coding for the level or map you are playing on can happen that is independent of a character or a specific object blueprint. For instance, if you want the map to change from day to night based on an in-game timer, you can set that up in the level blueprint rather than on a specific actor. There are specific blueprints for game modes and player controllers as well. We use these to set up specific functions for our levels, and we can load them on the fly based on what is needed. In the content browser, you'll also see your different levels or maps that you created. You can make multiple levels or maps and link them together instead of making one huge map that may cause loading issues. It all depends on what style of project you're making. Also in the content browser, we have sound effects. This can be as simple as an audio file like an MP3 or a WAV file. Unreal will accept a variety of your usual file formats. You can programmatically set them up to play on an event like firing your gun, or constantly like background music or ambient noise. The engine can also automatically adjust the sound and positioning to make it louder when you get closer to where the sound actor is placed. There are also particle emitters. The starter content comes with some fire, electricity, and explosion effects. These are all created in Unreal's particle system called Cascade, which I'll also cover in its own video. You can drag these into the world and adjust the size and other effects in the detail pane. These are the major assets that you'll use from the content browser, but there are many more that we'll touch on in a future video as they come up. Let's move on to some more basic functions. Unreal Engine has some pretty cool shape creation tools called BSP brushes. These can be resource heavy on your project, but luckily Unreal can bake these into static meshes when you publish your project. You can also manually convert them as needed in the editor. These brushes can also easily be textured just like our doorway from earlier. To get to the brushes, we need to modify our user interface a little bit. If you go up to the top menu bar and select the window drop list, you can select the Place Actors option. This will give us the Place Actors window on the side. You can move this wherever you'd like, but I like to right click on it and select Dock to Sidebar. That way I can hide it easily. On this menu there are a few things I want to cover, but let's click on the Geometry button first. You can click and drag a box into your world. From here you can scale and rotate the box just like any other actor. Let's go over here and delete this wall so we'll have a location to place our box. I'm going to play with the scaling widget a little bit so we can make our box big enough to be a room. After we have that placed, we can go over to the Details pane. You'll see all the options for the box brush we're using. Let's click on the checkbox that says Hollow, so we're not dealing with a solid block. This will make it where we can walk inside of it. Now all we have to do is just create a door. From the Place Actors window on the side, drag in another box. We want this one to be solid, not hollow, but we also want to change the brush type to subtractive in the Details pane. This will allow us to cut into the other box that we placed. Let's make this one into a door shape using the scaling tool. Once we shape it the way we'd like and we drag it into place, you'll notice that it automatically cuts out our doorway. It really is that simple. You can also shape each face inside of your brushes instead of scaling the entire thing using the brush editing tool. You can enable the brush editing mode by selecting the drop list at the top of your screen that currently says selection mode. You can use this tool to extrude faces or scale or move faces of our cube separate from the rest of it. Now that we have our room built, we want to take the time and apply a texture to it just like we did with our doorway earlier. You can go back to your materials folder in the content browser and let's select the same brick wall texture from earlier and just click and drag it on each of the walls, including the inside. You can fly your camera view inside of the room and apply your texture to the interior walls. Also in the Place Actors pane, we have all of our lights that we can use. Lighting is a huge part of any 3D environment. It can really set the mood for a particular game. For instance, imagine a long dark hallway in a horror game. With the proper lighting, you can really sell the effect. We're going to place a single light in the room that we created, and then make the world dark around it so you can see the effect. We have many styles of lighting at our disposal. Skylights, which will light up the entire world, a directional light which points in a direction like the sun, and you can programmatically set these to move with in-game time of day, etc. Spotlights, which work exactly like a spotlight in real life, and then point lights, which light up a single point like an orb. Let's use the point light. Let's go ahead and select the point light and drag it into the corner of our room that we created. Over in the Details pane on the right, we can adjust the intensity and color to get the effect that we want to see. Now we want to darken the world around it. In our outliner, we'll want to select the directional light that already exists on the map. When you click on an object in the outliner, in this case the directional light, and push the F key on your keyboard, it will automatically jump your camera view to where that item is placed on the map. Lights are one of those invisible objects I mentioned in the last video, like the player start, except that it's not completely invisible. You can still see the lighting effect. The icon that it uses in the editor cannot be seen, however. Underneath the outliner in the details pane, with the directional light selected, you should see the intensity value. Let's lower this so the world is darker. I think 0.5 is a good value. Now that we've changed that, you'll notice that the brightest source of light is coming from our room. Let's go ahead and play the level again and see the difference. Experiment with changing these values on different lights and placing more lights and box brushes to build you some hallways and see if you can create a creepy scene. In the next video, I'll show you how to acquire additional assets from the Unreal Marketplace and import them into your project. There's a lot of good free stuff on there, and a lot of independent developers make complete games just from free assets. Hopefully what you've seen so far will inspire you to come up with some cool ideas, and the next video should help you bring those ideas to fruition. With that, take it easy, and I'll see you in the next video.